rule, it not only evens the playing field, but it also allows you to focus on what's important right now. If we're in a fight and basically talking about something and you start bringing up the past, bringing up the history, the decisions you made 2, 5, 20 years ago, right? You never forgive, you never forget, you never move on, then you're sort of stuck. You've basically put yourself in a place where the relationship can't move forward because you're constantly going back and revisiting the past. But if you're not allowed to keep score, it really forces the conversation to happen like, what do you not want to happen now? And how do you want to prevent this from happening in the future? Which is a much better position to be in because you can learn and grow from each other as opposed to basically just continuing to sort of say, well, you did X, Y, and Z to me, and then I'm going to keep score and I'm never going to forgive you for any of that stuff.
Right. Yeah, forgiveness is the key to everything, right? I mean, sometimes we got to forgive our spouse. Sometimes we got to forgive ourselves, other people in our lives, because the forgiveness is as much for it's more for us even than it is for them in order to kind of release that. And I will say, again, looking back at things that happened in the past, so you can't drive forward if you're looking in the rearview mirror. You're just going to crash. You're going to crash your car. You're going to crash your business. You're going to crash your relationship. The rearview mirror is smaller than the windshield for a reason. You can look back to it to refer to where you've been, right? So you can learn from your mistakes. You certainly don't forget the past, but you can't just always be focusing on it because you're going to crash. Your relationship is going to crash. Your business is going to crash. Your health, whatever it is going to crash. You got to pay attention and live in the present. But many of us don't. Many of us tend to live in the past. And until you forgive, you can't go to that next level of what you want to do. And I have that conversation with my parents. I said, you've got to forgive in order to move forward. Until you do, you're never going to live that happy life that really where you want to be. We've all made mistakes along the way, and we're hopefully, and I ask and thank God every day to help me make the best decision today for myself and my family with the information I have around me. So maybe I don't have the right information. Maybe I made the wrong decision. Does that mean that I should be punished for it for the rest of my life? No. And sometimes, in a relationship, we need to let go and just move on. So I agree with that one 100%.
Well, and that really brings us to the third and final rule, and then we can talk about applications here. But the third and final rule in this is to not go to bed angry. And what that does is that if you can't keep score and you're not allowed to go to bed angry, it really forces the situation to deal with things in the present, deal with them in the moment that they're happening. And people fight differently. I had to learn with my wife that she wants space and time to think about and process her thoughts before she gets into an argument, which I give, it was the opposite. I wanted to get into it right now, right? And so I had to learn to back off, give her the space that she needed to be able to compose her thoughts and come back to it. But the idea that if we knew we had to finish by the end of the night before we went to bed, then that really sort of put the onus on us to basically say, okay, let's deal with this. Let's not let it fester. And the benefit of not dealing with it like in the next day or the day after that is you only have the opportunity to deal with it now, meaning the worst that you can have is a bad day. If you don't deal with the problem, you let it go for weeks or months or years, you can have a really bad long-term relationship because you never dealt with the thing in the time that it was happening. But if you deal with it the day that it happens, then you're able to reset and start over fresh in the next morning. And the idea is we're going to make mistakes. Absolutely. These relationships, it is very challenging to basically, you're going to change and grow. She's going to change and grow. And as you're looking at sort of this, it's how do we change and grow together? And if we love and respect each other, we're going to see this as an opportunity to learn from when the mistakes are made. And from that perspective, here's what we're going to try to do better the next time around. But given those three rules, if you can really focus in on appreciation, it's more important to say I appreciate you than I love you, to not keep score, to focus on exactly all the things that are right in the relationship and focus on the present as opposed to the past, and then to use that time limit to say we don't go to bed angry, which means let's resolve whatever conflict we have so we start fresh in the morning. It's just such a relief to let it all go and to truly be in a relationship in the moment. I
completely agree with that. The appreciation, it's like anything else, gratitude, right?
Yes. Gratitude.
Life is about gratitude. The more grateful you are for what you have, the more you'll get. If you're not grateful for what you have, arguably you don't deserve anything more.
Yes.
And in a relationship is very much the same way. When you're grateful, when you're appreciative of whatever it is that you like to have happen in your relationship, then you're going to get more of it. you're going to get more attention. You're going to get more love. You're going to get more of whatever it is. If you're the opposite, the same is true, right? The same is true to the other side. If you neglect and if you're not grateful, then you're going to get less and less and less of it until the relationship falls apart. Because again, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yes.
Very much like, Mr. Miyagi trimming the little bonsai tree, right? You got to keep trimming that thing all the time for it to stay alive, or you got to go and pick the weeds out of your garden, because if you don't, the weeds will take over your garden, then you have nothing. That's so right. I think that appreciation and gratitude is great. Don't keep score. I love that one as well. And I'm just going to hit each one of them because I took some notes as you did that. Don't keep score is great. And again, however everybody does things in their relationship, they do. But one of the things that I know that some people do is they keep separate bank accounts. Mm-hmm. And I think that might be, I'm not saying it is for everyone, but it might be a recipe for disaster, where maybe one earns more than the other, and maybe one of them, maybe they share the same workload, maybe one does more than the other. But the reality of it is that is taking score. It's like, well, so I can pay to go on my half of the vacation. You can't go? Right. Sorry. Whoa, right. That's a big ass problem, especially if maybe somebody takes a bigger role with the children, or somebody, you really can't do that. I mean, I'm okay with everybody having their own stuff, right? So you got married and you had this, you had that. Okay, let's have a joint account, and moving forward, this is what we're doing. Otherwise, that whole keeping score, oh, I made more than you, or I paid for that vacation, or, I could afford my food and drinks on vacation. You got to drink water and ham sandwiches while it's just, right. It's difficult. So I'd encourage everyone to just have a joint account. And then don't go to bed angry. That's another great one. My wife's aunt and uncle would tell me that all the time before we got married. And they're so on point, because the reality of it is, if you don't deal with the problem now, tomorrow it's just going to be worse. Yes. I'll tell you another quick story. When my wife and I were dating, we'd be at an event or whatever it is, and I'd feel that something was just off. And I said, hon, what's the matter? Is everything okay? No, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I'm like, fine. Okay, it's not fine, but I'll let her go. The next day, still kind of give me a little cold shoulder. I said, honey, what's the matter? Was it something I did? You don't seem the same. No, it's okay. Everything's fine. The third day, okay, now listen, I know that I must have done something wrong, but I don't know what it is. So it couldn't have been that bad. Please just tell me, what is it? Let's just hash it out. No, everything's fine. So the next day she'd want to have the fight. And I'd say, I'm sorry. I gave you 3 days. You made me suffer for 3 days. I'm not going to go for another 3 days. So just put it out of your mind and forgive me or whatever, because it couldn't have been that bad. But Moral of the story is really deal with the monster when he's small, so you don't have to deal with him when he's larger. Because very much like Bill said, and that was brilliant. Most people, that was going to be, and that'll likely be another podcast, but most people don't have a bad day. They have a bad minute or a bad 5 minutes that they milk the whole day. Whether it was just something silly, something simple, an argument, maybe you woke up late, maybe you ran a red light, or got caught at the light, caught traffic, whatever it is, and you don't let that go, or you don't forgive that action or whatever it was that happened, that bad day. That bad minute turns into a bad day, turns into a bad week, turns into a bad month, turns into a bad year, could turn into a bad life. There's so many people that are just miserable, whether it be in their relationship, which God knows there's tons of those people, or just miserable in general. They're just not happy people. I would say that 95% of the time, not to say more, it's because they don't let shit go. Yes. Sometimes you just got to forgive and let it go.
And I think what's interesting is this concept of what you focus on, you feel, right? So if you focus on gratitude and you focus on appreciation, that's what you're going to feel in the relationship, right? If you focus on pain, frustration, why did they do this to me? Why is this happening to me? And especially if you focus on yourself and what you think you deserve, or how you think it should be different, in all of those things, it really does change the dynamic of the relationship, because you now have set an expectation. And sometimes you set an expectation without even telling your partner. How crazy is that, right? You're willing to basically sort of set a bar and not even tell them what the bar is. And so in this sort of scenario, when you think about sort of what's important, it's really, how do you want to feel in the relationship? If you want to feel appreciated, then give the appreciation, right? Because that will help sort of reciprocate. The more appreciation you give, you're going to get a lot more back. And the same thing in terms of this idea of letting go. It's like, if you don't want someone to keep score on what you're doing, don't keep score on what someone else is doing. It just gives you this opportunity to really focus on, how do we be great together? How do we be in a great position together? How do we just let go of the things that have held us back and just build the relationship we've always wanted, right? And the beautiful thing is, because it's a growth relationship, it's now where do we want to go from here? Where do we want to travel? How do we want to spend time together? Like, what does that look like? I mean, when we first started dating before we had children, a perfect Saturday was sleep until noon, right? Order Chinese food, watch the movies, go back to bed. That was a perfect Saturday, right? And now it's like, we're lucky if we have 15 minutes together, right? So we have to say, okay, so let's plan this differently. We know the kids have to come first. We're going to focus on what their needs are. And then we just find the time when they're in bed or when they're out with their friends, we figure out those other pieces. But it's like, the complexity of the relationship makes it fun, right? Because that complexity sort of always is, okay, what's the latest challenge we need to solve together? How do we do this together? Because we are a team. And because we're a team, we're working on it, we know that, neither one of us has all the answers, and we're just going to respect each other's opinion and explore together. Like, how do we want to be together? How do we want our family to be together? And just continue to use that as an opportunity for continuous growth.
Absolutely, because you've got to grow together. Here you take two individuals that grew up in different environments. Your parents were divorced, her parents were happily married. Maybe one had more, and not necessarily your relationship, but in any relationship, who grew up with more, who grew up with less, who was this or who was that, and you have two completely different people that say, okay, now great, we love each other, now we're married.
Right. Right.
Now you've got to try to figure out how to live together. And then you have these little people that show up and really wreak havoc on your life. I mean, they're blessings for sure, but holy cow, they can wreak havoc on your life, right?
And it really depends on, again, what's the focus there. For me, one of the things for my kids is that I look at them as my masters. They're my gurus. They're the ones that are teaching me. Because what ends up happening is, when I'm mad, I'm never mad at them. I'm always mad at something about myself I haven't fixed. And so what I constantly look at is to check in. It's like, what's frustrating me right now about the situation? And if I can use that as an opportunity, then I'm also growing with them. So I know that I'm not the perfect father, and I'm good with that, right? I'm going to do the best I possibly can, as everyone does. But what I'm also looking at is, how am I constantly learning? How am I learning from them? If I look at them as my teachers, the kids will teach you so much about yourself and teach you about your relationship, right? What are your pressure points? What are their hot buttons? What are the things that you need to work on in life, right? Because when you're upset, it's really not usually them. It's really about something in your own self that you want to basically work on. And it's a great opportunity to learn about that,
Absolutely. Kids can teach us more than, in some cases, than we could even teach them. Actually, I listened to something the other day, I actually shared it. It said that until children are 4, they actually operate on a genius level, where they're always learning and they're fearless, so they can accomplish anything. That's, I can do this. I can fly. I'm Superman. I can do this. I can do that. And then we as adults stifle them. We stifle their creativity. We tell them no and no and no and no.
Who do you think you are?
Exactly. Who do you think you are? You're going to do this. You're going to do that. So, and the adulthood kind of screws that up. Bring back Toys R Us. I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
But kids can teach us so much. Really, they teach us a lot about ourselves. And I had, one of the reasons that I'm even doing the podcast, oddly enough, let's just say that, I came home one day after having gone to an event, and I won't say whose event it was yet, but that'll be a surprise for a later podcast. But I went to someone's event, it's one of my mentors, and somebody I really look up to. And I went to the event, and I left the event. I came home, and I took my son somewhere, and my youngest son said, "Dad, I want to ask you something." I said, "So go ahead and ask." And he said, I'm afraid you're going to say no." I said, "Okay, well, the reality of it is, the answer is always no for the question we fear to ask. We don't fail to ask it. We fear to ask it. So the answer is always no to the question you fear to ask. So go ahead and ask your question." And he asked me the question, and well, the answer was no, but but I used it as a learning moment, not only for him, but for me.
Yeah.
What I did is I called the location where I had been at this event, and I said, "Hey, is such and such still there?" And they said, "Yeah, he's here. He's still meeting with some people." I said, "Great." I drove down there, and I said, "Listen, we just had this meeting, and I had this interesting conversation with my son when I got home, and I'm here to ask if you'll be my first guest on my podcast that I'm going to start.